All right, mic check, check, 1, 2, what's up, Des Moines? Woo! Actually, my co-founder is the rapper, and I'm not gonna do that. If you guys don't know Max on the track, as he's affectionately known, he actually is a rapper, and there's like video out of it on the internet, you can go find it. So today, we're currently in the midst of running a business called Workhound. We started it a little less than 3 years ago. And my goal here is to give you guys the talk that I always want to see at conferences, but I don't get to because the people that are usually speaking at conferences are much more accomplished than I am. And so I want to thank Mike and Kaylee and the folks running the conference for letting somebody who hasn't really proven themselves speak, so that maybe that will help somebody who's really closer to where I am than somebody who's already, had their success and drives a Tesla or, a car with scotch on the license plate. So without further ado, I'm going to dig in. And the title of the presentation is Ramen, Roaches, Riches? So I can tell you for sure we got 2 of them. I don't know about the third. So we'll find out. So this is the quote that drives a lot of what you're going to see in this presentation. And it's the most accurate telling I've heard of my experience. Entrepreneurship is the price you pay for freedom. Like, it's super easy to make startups really glamorous, and yeah, some people look like the guy who founded Snapchat and date models and things like that, but the reality is, it's hard work. And it's your particular brand of hard work, which is the freedom part of it, but it's really hard work. So, really how this all started, and you can't make this story up. So it started with Max and a beer. Now Max, my co-founder, some of you guys know him, some of you don't, but he had gone out after working at Dwala and started kind of doing corporate innovation consulting. We both came up through Startup Weekend, and he had basically taken that model, tried to apply it to consulting, and it turns out that when you're consulting and you're new, you think everybody is your customer, and then that ultimately leads to not getting any customers because you're not focused at all. And so one of his mentors said, "Hey, jackass, focus, and have you heard about the problems in trucking?" And Max learned all of these problems and then came to me and said, over this beer, "Have you heard about the problems in trucking?" Hadn't. Turns out, trucking, there's 3.5 million truck drivers in the US. It's the most common US occupation, and they're doing it terribly. Like, there's 95% annual turnover at most trucking companies. It costs $5,000 to $8,000 to hire a single driver, so even a small company is spending millions of dollars on recruiting. The average age of a driver is 55. New millennials won't do this job. It's really crazy. And by the way, it touches every single thing in our economy. Look around the room, pick a thing. It was probably, if it's not a person, it was probably on a truck at some point, and many of you may have been on trucks in different ways. But seriously, I have a knee that's been replaced. The parts that replaced my knee were on a truck, so I guess that counts. Max then hits me with this. That's the prototype that started this company. You can see, Max is fine, but it looks like he has a medical problem with his penmanship. And this is what he came to me with. And he said, "I know a guy." And that guy was David Arnold. He was the managing director of the Straight Shot Startup Accelerator over in Omaha at the time. And Max had talked to David, and David likes Max. And so even though applications were already closed, Max got him to agree to take his application. And Max literally just said to me, "Can I just put your name down for the tech? I'll do the application." So literally, I just drank a beer and said, "Sure," right? That's how this company started. 24 hours later, on a Saturday, at 5 a.m., we got a letter saying we were in. So our company is a weird story. We start with an investment. And is that visible? Yeah, okay, cool. We start with an investment from Straight Shot. So literally, we went from a beer and a bar napkin and questionable penmanship to forming a company and cashing a check in 6 weeks, something like that. That's not normal. That's super weird. We never sidebarred this job. We didn't work on it at nights and weekends. We just jumped in full time right away. And we knew that we wanted to do something, and we essentially had someone giving us $20,000 for a napkin. All right, good enough to start. Let's try it. And it wasn't really the only strange thing on how we started. As we got going, and I don't have my notes on these slides. Is there like notes on these slides somewhere, Mike, or is it just the confidence monitor? Okay, no notes. We'll figure it out. So we got into Straight Shot, and we thought, oh, we're going to go learn. We're going to go be the dumbest guys in the room and get the most out of this. But it turned out that because Max and I had been through startup weekends, I had run 5 or 6 of them. I had been through the process. I learned about lean startup. Like, these are all the techniques that are already being applied. So instead of going and being taught, we ended up learning by teaching, which is actually a pretty effective way to learn. And it gave us a real good chance to apply those things that we had learned in other venues to our own real business. That was an invaluable experience. And while I will say that, like, we didn't learn as much as direct, we weren't taught as much as we expected. We did have really valuable advice. Max got a lot of really valuable mentorship on cold calling and practice in cold calling. And I learned about accelerators, and I learned about tech mentorship. So I'm a developer. I've been a developer for a while. If you're technical at all, you know that things in development move pretty quickly. Like, the reality is that anything that's modern is probably less than 5 years old. So mentorship in tech doesn't really mean mentorship, in my opinion. And it means peers. And it means peers that kind of understand where you've been, because nobody has enough experience in anything to really be a mentor. It's more about, we're going to go through this together. So we learned that. And then finally, we started our accelerator with like nothing but an idea. That's not common these days. Normally, you've got some traction. You've proven yourself a little bit to sort of earn your way into the Ivy League or whatever. We didn't have that. We started with an idea, but because we were so unencumbered when we started, we were able to end that accelerator with a product. And we ended that accelerator with our first customer. But post-accelerator, this is what I call the gulf of despair. This is when, like, the heady times of, like, being handed $20K for a bar napkin were over, and we actually had to, like, go run the business. So we're really fond of saying we win or we learn. So yeah, we won. Like, this is us holding a big cardboard check because we're the first and only winners of Truck Tank. That's like a real thing. Well, it was a real thing. It's out on the internet somewhere. You can find it. There's like 4 episodes of all different time lengths that describe our experience in Truck Tank, which was these guys' version of Shark Tank for the trucking world. There were, and it was the real hodgepodge. It was really interesting. There was like us. There was a guy who had literally like quarter scale versions of semi trucks and cars and stuff like that, and was making films with them. And then there was the nicest man in the world, like, and the most sincere person I've ever met, that had a children's book called Darren the Dumper. I'm just gonna let that sink in. But we also learned a lot. We got a ton of no's during this time period. So we had 4 different accelerators that we applied to after Straight Shots, all the more prestigious ones. Y Combinator, the Y Combinator Fellowship Program, Techstars Sprint KC. This was back when Sprint was running Techstars in Kansas City, and Techstars Chicago. And we kept getting closer, and still no. And at this point, like, we've come through the accelerator. Yeah, we had a little bit of money, but like, that gets spent pretty quickly, and we're not taking salaries, and we're not getting customers really yet. Like, this was a really, really tough time, but we learned a lot. And there's probably more detail in there that I would remember if I saw my notes, but I'm happy to answer those questions afterwards. So yeah, you can see these orange nopes. Like, that was the really tough time. And that was about a year there. Now, Mike was with us through a lot of those nopes, and he kept us going and kept us on the right path till eventually we get to that period where you see Dynamo. And Dynamo was the end result of us, like, doing a lot of learning by losing. So Dynamo is a group of folks that not only did they share our ideas around building tech startups, the Techstars model, the Silicon Valley, but you can do it anywhere type model, and also they knew trucking. These guys literally sold a business for somewhere around $250 million in trucking, and then they took that money and they started investing in startups, and they started investing in their town of Chattanooga. And Dynamo is a logistics-focused accelerator. So instead of being a local regional accelerator, it was vertically focused. And that's very important, I think. It's similar to GIA, which is focused on insurance, the Ag Tech Accelerator, which is focused on agriculture. These guys are focused on transportation and logistics. And that's where we were. We started in trucking. And so these guys made a lot of sense for us. And that's when Max and I spread our wings from square one and headed down to Tennessee to start Dynamo. So if you're following along, we've gotten $20K from Straight Shot. We did get the POCR with the help of John and Adrian. So we got a $25K there. We got $12.5K a match. Literally Max, myself, and his dad wrote a check. And now we're getting $30K from Dynamo. So we've got a company. Between the two of us, we're still not taking salaries, and we've got about $40K in the bank when we're starting this accelerator. And we get to start in the accelerator, and then they're like, well, are you really an investable business? Like, you can generate revenue. Like, do you really need our money? And for us, we're looking at it like, we've always wanted this to be a bigger thing. We started building our software. We knew it didn't have to be trucking specific. We had that big vision that Tej talks about. But now we have the people that even are supposed to get software and supposed to get big businesses and supposed to get growing, and they're still questioning, like, do you really need us to grow? That was a little bit of a gut punch as well. But that Dynamo accelerator really set us up and put us in the position for what I would call our real raise. And so I'm telling you the financial story of the company now. I'll move through our people story, our customer story, and my personal story, which is the part that I'll end with because that's where most of the funny stuff is. But Dynamo really put us through the ringer. They followed the Techstars model. They had the managing director of Techstars London, John Bradford, come in as the entrepreneur in residence and really put us through the ringer. And it was excruciating. They asked hard questions and looked at us like idiots when we didn't know the answers because we were idiots. But by the time we got done, we had grown from 1 customer to 7. We were able to say we had increased revenue 300%, which is a really great sounding number, but it's also really easy to do when the actual dollar amounts are pretty small. So again, messaging. But it put us in a position to do a real raise. And we learned a lot over the course of that gulf of despair. We had tried to raise locally. We had tried to raise a small amount of money, $250,000 at that time. And we kind of got a lot of like, oh yeah, you're doing a neat thing. Come back to me when you have terms. And we never succeeded because we had also read Venture Deals, which is the Bible for funding, and we tried to do it the right way. Never float your own terms. Get a term sheet from multiple investors. Like, do all the things right. And we turned out that done is a lot better than perfect. So we didn't get it done the first time. The second time we went out and we said, you know what, you can say whatever you want about the right way to do something. The best way is the way that gets it done. And so we went out and we started with like a pretty good idea of what we wanted. We started floating terms to give somebody something to say yes to. We got introduced to a company or an investment firm called Right Side Capital out of California that really shared our philosophy that there are a bunch of businesses that are fundable, that are in very different geographic locations, that not everything has to be a $1 billion exit, but you can make a lot of real money in the process. We found the right people for us, and we gave them something to buy. And we said, here's our terms. Do you want to invest in our company? They are committed to giving you a yes or no within 2 weeks, and we got our yes. And within 5 minutes, they had connected us to another angel investor that they do business with who said, Right Side knows what they're doing. They've done the due diligence. I'll put in for another, half the round. So we had $250,000 of a $500,000 raise done in about 5 minutes from the phone call. It was a 2 or 3 week process leading up to that. But what I really learned there was were swimming with the current. Instead of trying to do things the right way, or instead of trying to fight the momentum of what we were doing, we went with the momentum, and that helped us get it done. We were able to involve some of the good people that we had from our prior conversations in Iowa, but once we had something for them to buy. So we had what they needed to then do their investment. So that's how we actually raised the first real money that came into Workhound. And that money has fueled us since. We closed that round end of 2016, beginning of 2017. That's fueled us through now-ish. We just closed the demo fund, which again, John and Adrian helped us with. And that's going to fuel us through this year. So that's another fun story, is that we're being pretty judicious with our capital. We're being really lean. And you're going to find out that some people think that's the wrong move too, right? So we just talked to an investor as we make connections and look at later this year that thinks we're not burning fast enough because we're not be able to grow as fast as we would like to. The flip side of that coin is we could burn faster, try to grow faster, and maybe we die. So we're always walking that edge. We're always learning. We're always trying to make sure that we are good stewards of our business, of our capital, of our people. And that's the timeline of money into the company. Again, I'm trying to be as transparent as possible because these are the things that nobody shows you otherwise. So now it's really just the grind. We've got to turn those dollars into lots and lots of American dollars. And we've been doing that. You'll see a little bit later in the customer slide, the investment did make a difference. You'll see as 2017 starts, the number of employees we have increases, the number of customers we have increases, and our goal is to make those customers as profitable as possible. Speaking of customers, here's the customer slide. This is the record of every customer that's in Workhound right now. You'll note that there's a first blue line there called the beer. That's where I'm anchoring all of these timelines. So I'm kind of going back and forth in time, running over the same periods of time through the life of the company. So you can see there during the straight shot accelerator, we have the Twin City debacle. This is about finding our first customers. So during the accelerator, we had identified a customer from Max's hometown, Little Rock, Arkansas. And for reasons that I can't find on Wikipedia, it's also called Twin City. And so we went down to a company down there. We thought we had the deal. We were going down to do the kickoff. It was our first customer. We were like, we're going down there in person. We're going to do this. So we hop in Max's car, drive 9 hours down to Little Rock, stay at his dad's house, and crash on the couch. And we go out to the trucking company, and there we met our first nemesis, the cranky old white guy. So cranky old white guy is the trucking company owner that thinks that everybody should shut the hell up and do their jobs, pull themselves by their bootstraps, and it's work, and shut up, you whining bastard. And he killed the deal right there in the room. This guy wasn't even an executive. He was a guy that had formerly been an owner of the company, had retired. They begged him to come back and do some operational crap. And he just killed the deal right there. Influence. So what do you do when you get your first customer killed in the room? You go to this place and eat a whole fried catfish and drink a 40 because that's the only thing they serve. And we went back to the accelerator and tried again. And so you'll see another company here, Florelli, that's a really small bar. Then we learned something else. Don't work for free. If you're good enough at something, you should be getting paid for it. And what we did at Florelli was we sold the deal. I sat in the room while Max did it. I couldn't believe it when he said it's $1,000 a month and the CEO said yes. I was about ready to back him down. Oh, we'll do it for $500, but I didn't. I shut up. Amazingly, if you know me. And so the deal was sold. We're getting ready to get started again. In the meantime, between the yes and between when we're kicking off, they hire another cranky old white guy. And cranky old white guy number 2 is a recruiting specialist, a head of recruiting. And he knows what he's been doing for 25 years. And by the way, he understands the multi-generational workplace, and he can tell us how to speak to everyone. And he wants his money for ads. And so, sorry, we're going to pull the deal. At this point, we really wanted feedback on our product. It was brand new. Like I built it like sitting in a room, an accelerator, like drinking, caffeine and hoping that something worked. And so we really wanted the feedback. So we said, you know what? We'll do it for free. We'll keep going. Turns out that was a really bad idea. We got going with him. Cranky old white guy, never cared about the product, never put any effort into it. He wasn't spending any money, so he didn't have any pain. And it turns out that old quote about getting things too cheaply means you don't value them, that's absolutely right. So 11 weeks into a 12-week pilot, we decided we were going to kill the deal. Our intent was to tell them on Friday, and on Wednesday they said, we're done. So it was a mutual feeling. It's like a breakup. You say, it's mutual. I'm just going to go cry in the corner now. So yeah, that was customer experience number 2. Then we got First Express. First Express was the first company that really bought into what we were doing and took a chance on us. They're orange because they've eventually churned, but you can see they were with us for over a year. They were a really great customer. They gave us our first yes, and our first real yes, our first paying customer, and they really helped us learn about our own product. And in doing that, we were able to get SRT and Parkway and UPT, and they're still with us. Every company that's in blue there is still with us. SRT is our longest current customer. They were the first ones to give us white papers and recommendations. They're still one of our ardent supporters, and that's been one of our just biggest personal successes and pride points. Those first, 5 customers, absolutely the hardest to get. You can see, we had a lot of no's, a lot of churn, a lot of horrible experiences, but there's nothing to do when that's happening. Like the only thing you can do is fight harder. Like either you can decide, I'm done with this, I want to go back to having a salary, or you can keep fighting and keep fighting harder, and that's what we did. And so you can see through 2017, we're starting to make some momentum. We're starting to bring on some customers. And you start to see, some of those have churned out because we find, we learn more about ourselves, we learn more about our company, we learn more about who's going to be a good fit for us. But now in 2017, you can see where we got the 500K, the additional resources. Now we've learned enough that we can actually start adding these customers at a good clip. And you can see, just looking at that graph there, 2017 has been a good year for us. We went from, I think, 7 customers at the start of 2017, churned some out. We're up at near 20 now. We went from 7,000 or so in revenue a month to 40K a month. We'll be at 45 by the end of this month. That's when it really feels like, hey, maybe we really got a business here. It's been an amazing ride, and it's been a great place that we've started to validate some of our assumptions. Some of our assumptions were that we could get in early with bigger companies and expand. And it turns out like all those green dots are expansions. That's somebody that we started with, smaller deal, and ultimately they said, you've earned the right to do more business with us. And so we grow and we add them. Let's see. Finally, we're still looking for product market fit. The best description I've heard, there's a bunch of them and they all are valid in some ways. The best description I've heard is this one. Product market fit means an average salesperson can sell an average customer. We're not there yet. Max still closes all of our deals. We've got some other folks in the sales team that help. They fill the top of the funnel. They're doing a great job. But Max is still doing all the closing. We don't have another closer. That's someplace we need to grow. That's someplace that we need to get to. That's when we'll start to really feel good about product market fit. And that's when we'll start to do things like, that's when we'll feel good that we can keep growing the business. One of the things that Max does really well is he just hustles harder than anybody I know. Like Max is the guy that, if he can go visit a customer, he'll stay on your second cousin's grandma's couch just to save the money on the hotel room so that he can talk to that customer and try to make sure that they're happy. He's the reason that, one thing that we saw here, if you look at December of 2017, you'll see these 2 bars. You can't see them when I'm pointing at them on that screen. You'll see those 2 bars that say USX 90 day and USX pilot. Those end in December of 2017 there. That was our biggest customer at the time. We took a pilot that we'd been running for over a year. We expanded it, which is exactly what we thought we wanted to do. It was representing a full quarter of our revenue at that time, and it didn't work out. We lost that customer in December, and that was a real gut punch. But Max, and I have to give him all the credit here, hustled his ass off. By the end of December, we had half that revenue back, and by the end of January, we were again above where we were when we lost that quarter of our revenue. You can't coach that. Like, that's just hustle. And the reason we need that product market fit, so we have somebody that can close those deals, is because founders don't scale. Max doesn't scale, I don't scale. Like, we have to bring other people into our business, and we have to coach those people, and we have to train those people, and we have to trust those people to execute. And so this is what people looks like in Workhound. Again, you can see there's the beer, and then there's like a year plus where it's just me and Max, like just crashing in every one of those different offices. You can see there's the Exchange in Omaha, first version of Gravitate, we're in Square One, we're splitting time, and finally we're up to Dynamo. And we knew at that time we had 5 customers. We were doing everything ourselves, service, support, sales. I was still writing all the code, and we just couldn't do that and properly take advantage of an accelerator at the same time. So we brought on Customer Support 1, Customer Success 1, SK. I'm going to use initials here because I don't think it's fair to say people's names and record those or whatever. But that representative, very first person we brought on, okay, I want to see where we are. The very first person we brought on, great dude, helped us a ton during the accelerator, freed us up to do what we need to do, but ultimately, we couldn't connect with him. He didn't bring the full person to work. And you know, some people might argue that like workplaces are supposed to be professional or supposed to be siloed. But I think what Tage said in his presentation was that with startups, it's different. You're a family. You're in the trenches with each other all day, every day. And with this guy, he just couldn't embrace that. He did things like fly to Europe to like organize a surprise wedding for his best friend, and was just like, I'm gonna be out of the office for 4 hours while I fly over. Like, worked the whole time, didn't tell us that like he's off on this amazing experience, like organizing a wedding for his best friend, that we would have happily been like, dude, like go focus on that life like moment for a second and come back and we'll get the work done. And so without the ability to bring the whole person to work, without the ability to connect, he ultimately couldn't be a part of our team. And so we ended up having to let him go. Immediately after that, we hired our second customer success person. And again, the pattern follows here, right? Like orange people are gone, blue people are still with us. That person was hired again, quickly. They were hired immediately post the prior person departing, and we saw them working with some other teams in the accelerator. They became free. It was sort of like, oh, we checked references. They said she's all right, and we hired her on, and she did a great job as the third person on our team. When it was me and her and Max, she took a lot of pressure off our plate, handled our customers amazingly. But there was something that we didn't know during that hiring, and it's something that became important in another hire as well. There are different types of people that want to work at startups. There are people that are excited by the adventure. They're excited by building something new. They're excited by getting something off the ground. And then there's an overlap with people that think that because a startup is new, because a startup is small, it's a really good way to climb the ladder quickly. And they'll join a startup because they think, I'm going to get leadership quickly. And now, when somebody says, I want to be a leader, or I want to get a leadership position, I want to manage people, if they're focused on that in the hiring process, that's a red flag for me now. Because those people, and I can say this because I look back and I know that I was one of these people at one point, think that because they're good at the job, because they're good at the thing, that they've earned the right to tell other people how to do it. And that's the biggest thing I learned, is that you need collaborators, not dictators. And when somebody believes they've earned leadership and focuses on leadership in their role, often they want to tell people what to do rather than being a servant leader. And there's a difference between getting to tell people what to do versus absorbing blame and deflecting credit, of empowering your team, of bringing people along. That's the view of leadership that you really need in a startup. And those people are there because the adventure matters to them, the mission matters to them, and they will eventually be the leaders, but that's not where they're focused. They're not focused on getting to tell people what to do. So ultimately, she had to leave. Then we hired our first sales rep. He's still with us. Just a hustler like Max. Like, he's like mini Max. It's crazy. And you just got to find those people that mirror what you need in your company. One of the things that I think is really important, and you'll see that we had to let some more people go, is finding those people that are going to pull together. Like Tage did say, it's important to be able to challenge founders. That is important. But it's also important to be able to say, all right, I've made my challenge. I get it. We've picked a direction. We're all going to pull together to go where we need to go. Strong opinions weekly held is a fun term bandied about in software and agile, whatever. But that ability to, maybe you don't get 100% of what you want, but the ability to get in line with your team and pull in the same direction versus trying to go all over the place is really important. And that's what ultimately led to letting the next person go. You can see we had 2 hires, E1 and E2. E1 is no longer with us because he couldn't get in line and pull in the same direction. Wonderful guy. Unfortunately, a very good friend of mine. Was a very good friend of mine. Ended up, just not being able to see eye to eye, not being able to work together as a team, and not being able to disagree effectively. And if you can't disagree, you can't collaborate. And ultimately, he had to go, and that was really tough. So yeah, I'm kind of missing my slides a little bit, but that it's super hard. I'm just gonna go to the firing part because that's what I'm talking about. So yeah, had to let go of a great friend, lost a friendship over it, but ultimately, the team has to win over any individual decision. I can't let the rest of my team, suffer or feel negativity or have their creativity and productivity squelched because one team member isn't getting what they want. And ultimately, you have to part ways. If you get to a position where you're either gonna have to fire one person or the other person's gonna quit, you probably want to bet on the person that is gonna quit because they're the person that's thinking more about the team because they're trying to remove themselves from the situation. This is something that one of my investors told me when I was really struggling with this scenario. Because ultimately, that problem's not going to go away, and you're probably going to have to fire the other person eventually anyway. So best keep at least half your team if you can. All right, that sucked. But it does make the team stronger. Our team continues to improve. Every time we had to let one of those people go, these orange boxes, our team got stronger after they left. And that's not about them being bad people, and that's not about them, it's not even about their work, or they're all capable, they're all great people in general, but this stuff's really hard, and if your team isn't cohesive, you're not gonna win. You could take a team of any sports or whatever and put all your high flyers together, put all your all-stars together, and if they don't gel, they're not gonna be a good team. And so you have to find those ways to remove those impediments to your team coming together. And that's what we had to do in all of these situations. Yeah, that was terrible. So this sort of comes back around, right? Because as you can see, that firing part of being an entrepreneur is super hard. That's part of the price you pay. You don't get to do this for free. And that leads back into the personal journey. So hopefully there's some funny stuff in here, because that stuff was heavy. So this is the timeline of my personal life during the time of Workhound. So you can see some really great stats there, like my weight. for instance, starts over here at about 204. Currently, I'm pushing 230 or so drink it in, people. You can also see my personal income. So this is the real story of how companies get started. I was making $105,000 when I first made the decision to start the company. That plummeted to a goose egg for the next, I don't know, like 8-9 months. And then we finally made a little money. We were going to Dynamo, and my credit card was getting close to maxed out. And we said, all right, we'll give ourselves a little bit of something, and we paid ourselves $2,000 a month, basically enough to make a rent payment. And then we worked through that, same thing, finally until we made the raise, and then we brought ourselves as founders up to 50K. You know, that's you can live on that. You're fine. It works. It takes some of the extracurricular stress out of running the business. And this is another thing that I think is really important. I don't think that what we're doing as a startup is that hard. I don't think the problem we're solving is that unsolvable. I don't think the tech that we're creating is so bleeding edge that we need, you know, a team of PhDs and a, you know, particle accelerator to do it. But when you're a small company, you have to do it all with constraints. There's nothing that you get to do that doesn't have a tight constraint on it, whether that's time, money, investors, customers. Like, everything has a whole set of constraints around it. It makes everything harder, and that's why this stuff is so hard to begin with. It's not that the individual stuff is difficult. It's all of the extracurricular crap around it. You know, and one of the things that I'm fond of saying, and that Max likes to quote, is that, like, I don't really think that there are that many things that matter about starting a startup. Like, there's a bunch of stuff that's table stakes. Like, if you're starting a tech company, you're probably smart, you're probably a hard worker, you're probably, you know, reasonably well connected, you probably care about what you're doing. Like, that sounds important, but it's kind of all table stakes. The only thing that matters, and you can see this through the whole timeline, every single timeline we had, was the ability to get punched in the face and then stand back up and then have someone punch you right in the face again and then keep going. There's no 100% days in business. Like, every day that something cool happens, like, something shitty happens too. Like, if you get a bunch of 80% days, you're probably doing okay. We have another investor that's really fond of saying that business is a whole bunch of 51-49 decisions, and you win by accumulating those 2%. I really think that's true. And part of the reason that's true is because of these constraints, and you can see those constraints in this time. So not only in this lovely graph of my own weight and salary, you can also see every place I lived since we started this company. So, and they all have fun names, like the Flea House in Omaha, and the Baldodrome, which was my apartment here in Des Moines in the East Village, that if you guys were, like, on Foursquare when it was kind of a thing, I was checking in there a lot. It was awesome. There's a building called the 300 Building in Chattanooga. There's also the Crapartment in Chattanooga. Finally, 232, which is a great place. And now what I've decided to call Brickerdale, which is the Beaverdale brick we're in over in Beaverdale, because now I've moved back. And you can see those moves on the timeline. I moved from, well, there's not a DSM to Omaha view, but moved from Omaha to Des Moines, post Straight Shot. Moved from Des Moines to Chattanooga, post Dynamo, or pre-Dynamo, and then stayed. And then back from Chattanooga to Des Moines, because we learned that managing an engineering team from a distance was hard, and it made sense for us to have a founder in each of our offices. Because we needed both teams to feel respected, to feel that they had input, to feel cared about, and then ultimately we weren't doing that very well for about a year, and we suffered for it. And so I came back, moved in on Christmas Day, cold as hell, and I'm back here now. So here's the stats. We have 2 accelerators, 1 incubator, 3 cities, 6 moves. I put an asterisk on that because one of the things that you're going to see later is that I met my girlfriend Sandy right after I started Straight Shot, which is a wonderful story. But she's moved like 6 times in there as well, and there's office moves. So I've moved like something like 18 times in 2 years or something like that, and I hate moving. It's awful. But another constraint. So 3 infestations. And what you see there is my lovely Breaking Bad flea killing getup. Because literally the first house we stayed in, Max hustled again. Max is the kind of guy that's from Arkansas, is a rapper, works in tech startups, and goes duck hunting as well. And had a duck hunting buddy that had a half remodeled house that we could stay in for free. We stayed for free. We saved our $20K. We worked. But in so doing, when the house is half remodeled, that means like somehow animals can maybe get into the structure. I don't know. And literally the house got a flea infestation. That stuff creeps me out. And this was my attempt to rid the house of fleas. I failed and got a hotel. We also, moved to Chattanooga, and we stayed in the 300 building. And the 300 building was a magical place. It was essentially an old folks' home that had been converted into short-term apartments. Like, literally, they deactivated the emergency buttons. They were still on the wall, slapped a fresh coat of paint on it, and said, here you go. It smelled like old people in the lobby. I'm not kidding. And there, my apartment had roaches, and Max's apartment had bed bugs. So yeah, again, constraints. When you're trying to live cheaply or live in short term, you get some weirdness. And you gotta believe that stuff was distracting. And then Sandy joined me in Chattanooga when we decided to stay after Dynamo, and we got the Crap-partment. Now, the Crap-partment was built by a prominent landlord in Chattanooga that the banks love him because he builds really cheaply, and his tenants hate him because he builds really cheaply. And literally, the ceiling fell into our apartment while we were away one weekend. We broke our lease and moved to a townhouse in Chattanooga that ultimately was a really good fit for us. We enjoyed our time there, and so that was a nice kind of cap on our Chattanooga experience. And finally, we moved back to Des Moines. Now, that was at the end of the year. That was because I never really integrated well into the Chattanooga community, and Sandy did worse. She had a job that was extremely stressful for her, and we had no support network. And that's another thing that's important as entrepreneurs is like that support network. If I didn't have Sandy, if I didn't have Max, I probably wouldn't have made it through Chattanooga. But those 2 people were the only people I talked to, and they were the only people that knew what was going on with me. I didn't have any friends that I could go out and get a beer with. And I know, spoke to another entrepreneur last night who's really experiencing that now, and it's real, it's hard. So if you find yourself in that situation, like I did, you have to find a support network. Otherwise, you'll fail and you'll move back and whatever. And then now we're back in Des Moines. And this is what we've become. So if you see the first picture there, that was Max and I when we started the business. That was before anything had happened. We didn't have any customers. We didn't have any cares in the world. I was 30 pounds lighter, and I don't know, Max looked like that. And now you can see what we look like today. Like, look at that horrible grizzled beard. Like, we're super weathered. Like, since that photo, there's like a gray hair that's popped up like on the corner here. But we're still smiling. And that's what you can see in those photos because we're still moving forward. And so I don't know how Workhound ends. I don't know if we're ultimately going to be successful. I think we've had some success, and hopefully the story of that has been helpful to you. But yeah, that's the Workhound story thus far. Who knows what it's going to be tomorrow? And we can have questions.
All right, we're going to open it for questions now. If anybody wants to ask Kirps anything, any burning questions about the story he told, we've got microphones on both sides of the room.
Hey, Andrew, it's Matt. Question for you. Thank you. Awesome story. Really appreciate you sharing it with the audience here. It's so real. Like, everybody goes through that stuff, right, to really build success. You guys have done a phenomenal job with it so far, and I appreciate your candor about it, like really giving all of us an honest view into the business and personal side of it as well, because it's always both. I really appreciated you sharing like the employee charts and the customer charts, because like that stuff's very real too. Like, everybody goes through that with churn on both sides. My question is actually about on the customer side some of the early churn? Like it seems like in general that type of thing happens from you going, I'm speaking you generically, any startup going through a learning process of what their product really should be and kind of mastering that with those early customers, and also going through a learning process of like who they should sell to, like who the right customers are. And I guess I was curious to ask you to elaborate on that, like what you learned about the product and about the ideal customer just from some of those early client experiences, including the ones that churned, if that makes sense.
Yeah, so I'm going to repeat that back to you, just make sure I've got it. So you want to know, really, like, if you look at the slide, many of the early customers churned, like from a percentage standpoint. What did we learn from that, both about the product and about the type of customer? Is that effectively correct?
Yeah.
Cool.
Yes.
So yeah, we learned a whole bunch about that, and we thought about it a lot. So there were a couple of things that we learned. For us, it was mostly learning about the customer we were selling to. So the product we have is a relatively simple product. Like, there's a little bit more like code behind it, but it's effectively that stupid napkin drawing I showed you before, right? Like, it's not super complicated. Like Tage said, it's one question essentially on a form, and we work through and we take that data and aggregate it. And our customers like have never had that data before, so it's new for them. It's not like they're looking for features that we don't have. So that's been maybe skillful, but probably pretty much dumb luck that we've had that happen. So we haven't had to pivot hard off the original product idea. We continue to grow it, we continue to add capability, but like it's still essentially the same as where we started. What we learned about was the customers that we were ultimately selling to, and we learned that there are some real important. I'm going to go back because I want to look at them. I want to look at them as I tell you this. But like, there's some important things for us to understand about those customers. So again, cranky old white guy is our nemesis. When you have people in a business like that, what you're learning is something about the sort of organizational DNA of the business and what they think. And if that person is in a position of influence or power, that tells you something about the business. And what we usually found with those businesses is that they don't want to get better. They want the driver population to magically become what they think a driver should be. And this is not going to happen. Like, the reality of our product is that the people that are getting the most value out of it are the people that are taking the feedback from the drivers, understanding that those drivers are the front lines of the organization. They're the eyes and the ears, and they see stuff, and they have a lot of valid insights, and they can help make that company better. So the companies that are really getting value are the ones that are changing. So we did find that several customers were simply resistant to change. We try to identify that as much as we can. It's hard because you sort of have to end up working with somebody. You can sort of piece out some of the stuff during the sales process, and occasionally we'll kind of delay a deal or push off if we kind of detect that. But that was a big thing, is culture fit. If they don't want to embrace a better relationship with their workers, we're not going to be able to help them. The other ones, there was some just circumstantial stuff. Like this company down here, Trekker. Trekker was a fantastic customer. They loved our product. And then they lost their biggest customer in such a way that they ended up suing one of their own employees. You can't account for that. Like, that's just a thing that's going to happen. And then ultimately, we learned one more thing, and this is particular to the U.S. Express deal. We made a decision early on. We said it to ourselves that we weren't going to go whale hunting. And then USX is a whale, right? They're a big company. They're huge. And we went whale hunting even though we said we weren't going to do that. We learned that a hard deal to get is going to be a hard deal to keep. It was a really excruciating negotiation process. They pushed us off some of our core competencies to do what they wanted to do with the product. And we didn't do a good job of saying no. And ultimately, we weren't able to keep that deal. And the only good thing that came out of it was that we cashed about $50,000 worth of their checks in figuring that out, which I'll take that. But yeah, I mean, that's another thing that we think is really important, is that yes is easier to say, but no is a lot easier to do. And it's really hard sometimes to say no, but we say no because we never want to be in a position where we've said yes and we can't deliver. So that was another big learning for us. Does that answer the question? Cool.
Yes, thank you.
Awesome.
Again, appreciate all your candor with us today.
All right, back stage right. Worse than cranky old white guy is cranky old guy with Indian blood in him.
Hi, how you doing?
So as maybe a reluctant elder statesman in the startup community who has run lots of startup weekend, with this experience of hiring, firing, building, breaking, moving, all of that stuff, how would you structure the next startup weekend to build the next crop of startups in this community?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So basically, I'm going to repeat that back to you. I'm learning from your particular suggestion earlier. So what you're asking is, given the experience now, this whole set of stories for Workhound, what would I structure, how would I structure another Startup Weekend event to better serve that community and bring more people in? Okay, cool. I don't know. I think that there is, the thing that Startup Weekend really did for me was ignite the desire to start. And I think that's really important about what it is. I think that due to the structure of the event, there's almost no way to cover these things like hiring and investment, those things that just like take a long time and you're not really, like you haven't earned the right to even have the problem yet if you haven't been doing it in a while. So I don't know, but I feel like that's a big part of the learning, and that's one of the reasons I wanted to do a talk like this, is because that's something I can't share in an event. But I think that I wish I had the time to do the events, because I do think that they were really good collision points. I think they brought people together. I think they brought people into the community. But I think the biggest thing was focusing on igniting that idea, that desire to start, that a desire to like actually do a thing. So that I don't really know what structural change I would make. I mean, it's a problem I still struggle with. That's kind of a cop-out answer, I guess, but I don't really have a good one.
All right. Well, I think that might be all that we have time for.
Oh, okay.
Is there one more?
One more.
Yeah, go ahead.
So well established. I was a member of a cigar club at that time, and very fancy. No, so honestly, like so I wanted to start something about 5 years before I actually started something. Joe Leo, I don't know if he's still in the room. He's our attorney now, but he's also like really fond of like, I'm one of the only times he was really wrong. So I started pitching an idea about crowdfunding businesses like 3 years before the Jobs Act came about. And like, that was what like really got me into the community. I was really interested in how do like everyday Joes get involved in startups. And now I think that would be a really bad idea in general. But that was what I started with. And like, Joe was one of the first people that told me like, yeah, you'll never get that through. And then it became legal. But what prompted me to make the leap was realizing that it wasn't risky. Like, I'm in a little bit of a privileged and unique position in that, like, I'm white-ish, middle class, like, have a college degree, am a software developer. Like, I can go get a job doing that same, 6 figures probably tomorrow, right? Like, it's not, like, I'm fortunate enough to be in a profession that's in demand, that's really hard to stay unemployed. And so I realized that for me, the risk was being caught in a wealth trap. Like, there's a guy that we tried to hire in Chattanooga as a sales guy. Same thing applies. This is when we had that $40K in the bank, and we were really excited about him. He came in, he said, all right, I've talked to my wife. I made $400,000 last year with the acquisition, and made about $250,000 last year. I can come down to $200,000. I was like, you want 4 times or 5 times our budget? Sorry, bro. Like, and we were like, can you, okay, maybe you can be an investor. Like, you'd be accredited. Like, do you want to invest? And he was like, oh no, I don't have any free cash. He had a Jag. He had a $500,000 house. He had a boat. He had a lake house. Like, he was caught in this wealth trap. That's the risk to me. Like getting stuck and being a prisoner of that stuff and like not being able to do the things I want, to experience the things I want, that was the risky thing to me. So when I thought about it, like, it wasn't risky at all. And that's what made me make the jump, is that I found the right thing and I understood that, like, for me, it wasn't terribly risky. I don't know that that's everybody's experience, but, and I don't think it's fair necessarily, but that's my experience.
All right. Well, thank you, Kirps.
You're welcome.
That's awesome. Thank you.
Oh,